Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Partnerships for Profit. I'm your host, Ana Del Rio, and this week we are joined by Jessica Rhodes, the founder of Interview Connections, the first ever podcast booking agency. How are you doing?
I am doing great, Ana. I'm so excited to join you today.
I'm so excited too. I'm still laughing from my previous comment behind the stage. I was telling Jessica that I was nervous speaking to her because she is a guru here. Super excited to kind of bend your ear and get, as much information out of you as possible.
Yes.
I do see here that you, since 2013, you created this business. Tell us more. Like, where did this come from?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I come from very humble beginnings. I didn't start thinking I was going to create some monstrous company or anything like that. That wasn't my goal. I was a new mom. I wanted to be home with my baby. That is really the most simple answer. And when I had this goal of being a stay-at-home mom, I talked to my parents, as any, I guess I was 24 at the time, 25. And I'm like, Mom, Dad, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, what do you think I should do? And my dad told me about being a virtual assistant. He goes, you can start your own business. You can have an online business where you can choose your own hours and I'll be your first client. Because my dad is a business coach. So he said, I'll be your first client. And that's how I got started. He became my first client. He asked me to book him as a guest on podcasts. And that is truly how I learned how to do all of this, is working with my dad and, getting coached by him and just putting one foot in front of the other. Because again, I started this business when I was 25 years old. I had no business experience before that. And just by taking his coaching and responding to what the market was asking for, I think the biggest lesson is like, you just need a service that people want and need and listen and keep growing.
Absolutely. So take us back a little bit further. So you wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but what were you doing prior to that? What were you working in?
Yeah, so I was working for an environmental nonprofit organization doing door-to-door field canvassing. So I come from a world of door-to-door. Started that job when I was in college, worked there all the way through college, and then a few years after I graduated from Temple University. And so I loved it. It was so fun. It was a great way to travel and get to meet lots of people. And it really did hone my leadership skills to be able to go door to door and lead a canvas and work for a very established nonprofit. But that was not really the lifestyle that was going to support me having a family.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said that your father is in coaching, so he has his coaching business. Did he already have like an established podcast and then you kind of got this idea, or how did that come about?
Yeah. So my dad started his podcast, I think in like 2012. I mean, he had it going already when I started. So he became an entrepreneur like in the early 2000s. When I was a teenager, he was starting his business and he grew like newsletter marketing and then started business coaching and then started his podcast and his like YouTube show where he was doing like, back in like the mid 2000s, like 2012, 2013, 2014, everyone was doing like their business name TV. So I had like Interview Connections TV. That was like,
of course, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
that was the thing at the time. So he had like Newsletter Guru TV, Dream Business Coaching TV, and then he also had his podcast.
Oh, that really worked out for you. I'm a mom as well, and had I had like any kind of vision back in the day, this would have been it. But no, didn't happen. Went a different route for necessity. Yeah. Anyway, that's another story for another show. So, being that you founded the very first podcast booking agency back in 2013, what gap at that point did you actually see in the market that no one else was addressing?
I mean, it's podcast booking, because the thing is now, we're on partnerships for profit podcasts. Like everyone's
That's
talking about
true.
podcasts. Like it's
Yeah.
huge now. And I don't think people today who have started podcasting in the last couple of years or even the last 5 years realize how different the landscape was in 2013 and like 2012 and 2013. There were only about 2 to 300,000 podcasts in the world, and now there are 3 to 4 million. So it
Yeah.
was a much smaller landscape. Podcasts were smaller. I mean, the size of podcast audiences is actually probably similar now. There's just a lot more of them. But
Mhm.
PR firms were not booking their clients on podcasts. It was not a credible platform to use for publicity.
Mm.
And entrepreneurs like my dad, coaches, they were using podcasts, some
Mhm.
of them, but nobody was offering a service to actually help them get podcast interviews booked. Maybe some of them had assistants that did it for them or VAs, but like
Mhm.
nobody had created a service that was like, I will get you guests for your podcast. I will book you on podcasts. That was not something anyone was doing, but it's something that people wanted and needed. Like a lot of entrepreneurs who have been around a while probably know John Lee Dumas. He started the
Mhm.
world's first ever daily entrepreneur interview podcast called EO
Mhm.
Fire. And so I booked a lot of my clients on his podcast before he started charging. Um, um, but he was brilliant at always doing a pod swap, which is when you trade a podcast interview. So if I would say, "Hey John, I would love to book my client on your podcast." If they have a podcast, like my dad had a podcast, John would say,
Mhm.
"Great, can I also be on his podcast?" And so it's like, "Yep, I'll arrange for both of that." So then they get visibility to each other's
Ah,
audiences.
exactly. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's actually that's where we get our bread and butter there. That's what we do here as well. So
Exactly.
you definitely saw that niche and honed in on it and are providing a product that is going to be just, oh my goodness, just great. Like I'm so excited for this and for you. It just makes so much sense. Oh my goodness. So you booked over 30,000 interviews. What is the most surprising success story you've had from just one podcast guest appearance?
I mean, so my most surprising like success story that just blew my mind to the point where when I told my business partner, Margie, I told her
Mhm.
this story and she's like, "Is that real?" Like she didn't I'm like, honestly, I've asked the same question. So our client, Jonathan, he is a
Mhm.
SaaS entrepreneur and founder. So he has multiple companies in like the AI space. He's an author,
Mhm.
like serial entrepreneur. He attributes 9 figures in revenue to podcast guesting. And when I interviewed him, because he like tells me that, and I'm like, I need to interview you because how is that even possible? And so
Right.
so there's a full interview with him on our YouTube channel so people can hear it
Mm.
straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. I'm not making this up. So I asked him, like, how did you do this? And from one podcast interview, he got an investor into one of his companies.
Oh my goodness.
And so the backstory is that he was interviewed on a podcast and somebody
Mhm.
in the audience who listened to that show heard him and was a former client, but they hadn't talked in a few years. And so this
Mm.
person hears him on the podcast and reaches out. It's like, "Hey, Jonathan, I haven't talked to you in a while. Like, heard you on this podcast." They reconnected, got on a call, and that person ended up making I think he said like a 6-figure investment into one of his companies. So that is, to my knowledge, the first and only like company investor that has come from a
Whoa.
podcast appearance.
Wow, that's insane. That's
Yeah,
just, oh my gosh.
I know. But I think it's such a good lesson because you never know who's listening. A lot of us
No,
entrepreneurs
you
are always
don't.
in this mindset like we need new leads and new leads. And I'm like, do you know how many people already know who you are? That if you were just more active and more visible on podcasts, you would probably get in front of people that are like, "Oh my God, I know her. I know him." Like
Mhm, mhm.
I haven't talked to them in a while. So it's a really good way to re-engage people who already know you and already trust you, but maybe haven't heard from you in a while.
What? Oh my gosh. That is so true. That is so, so true. I do have a question and it just kind of left my head. That happens a lot for me, mom brain, stuff like that. Oh goodness, oh goodness. No, so at what point did you actually create your own podcast? Like at
So
what
yeah, that's a good question. I created
yeah.
my own podcast in 2014. Yeah, I think it
Okay.
was 2014. So I founded Interview Connections in September of 2013. And then a
Mhm.
year later, I remember because I went to the first ever podcast movement. Podcast movement is a huge conference in the podcast industry.
Okay.
And I went and I had the opportunity to facilitate a panel, which was very exciting. It was like my first
Ye
speaking opportunity. I was facilitating this panel. And I remember reading a book that Jared Easley, who's one of the co-founders of Podcast Movement, wrote about the power of collaboration and podcasting,
Mm.
and reading that
Mhm.
book and thinking about my vision and the goals I wanted to accomplish through my business. I realized I wasn't going to really become a thought leader in this space if I wasn't hosting my own show. I had been getting interviewed on podcasts and, was kind of this like secret weapon behind the scenes of a lot of
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, but I realized like I actually needed to get out from behind the scenes and have my own show. So then I created my podcast. So it's been 10 years, 11 years of having my own podcast. It's had many names over the years, many formats. That's the thing that's fun about podcasting is you can change it whenever you want because there are no rules. It's your own show.
Oh, the freedom. That is exactly what you're looking for, and I love that.
But if
I
anyone wants
think
to listen, it's now called the Interview Connections Podcast. So we decided to keep
nice.
it really on brand with the name of our company.
That is awesome. How many name changes did you go through?
Maybe 3 or 4.
That's not bad. That's not
Not bad.
you gotta stick with the one that feels right? So
Yeah.
so you mentioned entrepreneurs. So could you give us like a better idea of who it is that you're actually like targeting? Who it is that you help, with your business?
Yeah. So we work with entrepreneurs who feel like the best kept secret. That's kind of the best catch all description because we work in a lot of different industries. We have business coaches and health coaches and relationship coaches. We have marketing agency owners. We have real estate investors,
Mhm.
certified financial planners. Like we work with entrepreneurs in a lot of different industries, but the thing almost all of them have in common is they feel like the best kept secret. They have this really solid business, but not enough people outside of their own audience knows who they are. And so they use podcast guesting, being interviewed on other people's podcasts, as a way to get visibility to really
Mm.
targeted audiences.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you could give me like an idea as to what makes even like a good podcast guest,
Oh,
like how
yeah.
how does that work? Please tell
So,
me.
a good podcast guest, I could speak for an hour on this topic alone, but I will just give you
I
a couple. So,
Thanks.
I mean, a lot of this comes from like what I've learned from my previous experience going door to door. So, anyone that like
Mhm.
has sales experience or like I did theater when I was a kid. So, if you've ever experienced like being on a stage, like it's just being able to connect with the host,
Right.
having a connection. Because when there is good chemistry, when there's
Mhm.
a good vibe with the host, it's golden because people are listening to a conversation, and if the host and the guest are in this like really awkward conversation, nobody wants to listen to that. Like it's not
Yeah, it goes
fun.
really not at
Like
all.
yeah, there has to be some chemistry with the host.
Mhm.
So have that connection and be one of my top tips actually for being a really great guest is knowing when to put a period at the end of a sentence when you're speaking in a podcast interview.
Mm. What does that look like?
A lot of people don't know how to do this because they get afraid of keeping talking, but it's like when you say a sentence and you're done answering the question, stop talking.
Silence. Silence can be awkward, It's a little, especially when I'm trying to fill airspace and you're just like, oh, okay, what's the next thing? So yeah, I love that.
Exactly. And that takes like reading the other person's energy. That's why I love that a lot of
Mm,
podcast interviews are on video because I could probably, it's just like when you're on a Zoom call, if you're on a Zoom call and somebody, starts opening their mouth like they're about to talk, you know to pause? Did you want to say something?
Exactly.
So it's being able to read the other person's energy and get a sense of like, are they really engaged with what you're saying, or are they like complete with your answer? But it's really, there's this skill of being able to read the room and also know when your thought is complete. And that takes mindfulness. It takes being present. Because if you're not present, your mind's off, you're nervous, you're thinking about the next thing you have to do, you're talking and it's like, what am I even saying? I don't remember where this sentence started and where it's ending. So you've got to be present in the conversation. Some other tips are telling stories, so giving
Mhm.
like, just to kind of, because this interview is so meta because we're on a podcast about podcasting, talking about podcast
Right.
guesting. So,
Super meta.
but like to rewind it back, if you guys remember,
Mhm.
I shared a story about going to podcast movement and like reading this book that Jared had written and thinking about how like
Mhm.
I aim to bring listeners into these moments so they can picture me in those moments so they can relate to it and have this emotional connection. So it's like creating an emotional connection is the key to a really good podcast interview.
I think that's very interesting because you're coming from basically a sales background, the door
Yeah.
to door and things like that. And that painting of a picture is a very strong like sales strategy
Mhm.
in order to, get the whoever it is that you're trying to sell to. So it's a lot of the same concept. Would you agree?
For sure. Yeah. A lot of our clients who do very well with podcast
Mhm.
guesting are like our clients who are sales trainers and sales coaches do very well because they
Mhm.
know how to create an emotional connection. They know how to listen because good
Mhm.
salespeople listen more than they talk. They ask the right questions, they give the right information. So it's a lot of the same skills and sales apply to podcast guesting. It's tonality. Jeremy Miner's a sales trainer that talks a lot about your tone of voice. That's huge in podcasting and
Mhm.
podcast guesting.
Okay. I am definitely taking these mental notes and we'll reference back to this video, because it's going to be a huge help as on my journey as well. And yeah, and I'm so excited that, you're able to share this information. I have more questions. Like
Yeah.
many entrepreneurs chase ads and funnels. Why do you believe that podcast guesting often delivers a stronger return on investment?
Well, thank you for asking this because this is incredibly important. So many entrepreneurs, when they have reached the point where referrals aren't enough to get them to their goal, because that's how most of us grow, word of mouth
Mhm.
referrals. And then once we feel
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm at a plateau. I've gotten enough word of mouth and referrals. If I'm going to grow, I need visibility to new audiences. And people think advertising and paid ads and funnels is like a silver bullet. It's like, oh, if I just throw money
Mm.
at Facebook and Instagram, I will reach my goals because if I just put this magic money into the coin slot, all of a sudden it'll send me lots of leads and sales. And what people don't realize, because I've been running paid ads since late 2019 or 2020, I think is when we first started running paid ads. Paid ads can work really well for
Mhm.
volume. You can get a
Okay.
lot of people opting in if you've got a good ads manager and you've got a good lead magnet and all of the correct levers are getting pulled at the right times. It can be great for nurture, but I don't care how good the ads are. Those leads are cold.
Yeah, I was gonna
They
say
are
that. Yeah.
super cold. If I have a 1 minute video ad, like an Instagram reel that's running as an ad, that's 1 minute, most people are opting in before it hits 30 seconds. If I say
Mm.
enough in the first 10 seconds that they're interested, they're going to do the little opt in. Those leads have spent 10 seconds with me.
Mm.
They're usually
Yeah.
not ready to buy at that point. So the thing about ads is that it takes a lot of heavy lifting. We run a lot of ads and there's a lot of infrastructure on the back end that goes into nurturing these leads, to engaging them, to getting them on calls, to getting them to show up to master classes and training so that they
Mhm.
can be nurtured. When you're on a podcast, anyone who books a call with you from a podcast is pretty much ready to sign up because they've already spent 30 or 45 minutes with you listening to you talk to somebody that they already know, like, and trust.
That is so true. That
Yeah.
I didn't yeah. And that would make them, like, more of a qualified lead, absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
buyers today, like we're recording this in 2025, there are studies done that show that buyers today, on average, are binging 11 hours of your content before they even enter your sales funnel. So maybe you do have a great sales funnel, but people today aren't opting in until they're pretty much decided if they're going to work with you. So if you do not have free content by way of podcasts and podcast interviews on your YouTube, as a podcast, on a Spotify playlist, like if you don't have a way for people to binge you for 11 hours outside of your funnel, you are losing so many leads.
11 hours.
It's crazy. You know how many Instagram reels they have to watch to get 11 hours of content? Like,
yeah. You know how, well, I have an iPhone. You know how it does that screen, the screen timing? I'm like embarrassed every time that it pops up. I mean, I'm doing it for work. You know, I'm doing research.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm like, no, it's not anywhere near the 11 the 11 hours. But wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. And of course, not everyone's watching 11 hours, but a lot of leads, like they are spending a lot of time with you before I would say a lot of our clients who sign up, before they book the sales call, they've already done a lot of research. They've already binged a lot of content. They've received our emails. They've attended our master classes. So yeah, it's really, really important to have that content out there.
That is important. So tell me this, what would be like the biggest mistake that a business owner can make when like starting to podcast guest? And yeah, how do you specifically help them avoid making that mistake?
There's a lot of mistakes people make. If I had to choose one.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
No. So the number one mistake is having a really sloppy call to action. So when you're a guest on a podcast, you have this undivided attention of the audience. They're listening to you. They're hearing your story. If they make it to the end of that episode, they're still listening. They like you. And the host says, like, where can our listeners connect with you? How can they find out about you? What most podcast guests do is they say, this is my website. I am on Instagram at some username I can't remember. I am on LinkedIn. My first and last name is really hard to spell, so good luck finding it. I also have a book. You can find that on Amazon.
It's like their whole resume.
So they're sending people into a million different directions. Give people one place to go. Maybe two. I'll give you, you could do maybe two, depending on, like, maybe you do have a book and you want to promote, but you also want to give people the website. But most of our clients, I went through and I looked at all of our case studies of our clients who have seen an ROI, and I looked up what their call to action was. And actually a lot of them send listeners to their website because their website is already optimized to convert leads. That's like the first thing that they've invested in is building a website, optimizing it for conversions. They've invested in a website developer and a designer and a marketing team that helps them have a good website. So rather than make some crappy landing page that you whipped up 2 seconds ago so you could be on a podcast, send them to your website because people are already scheduling with you from your website.
You make it sound so easy.
People feel like so much harder than it has to be, though. That's the thing that drives me crazy is they're like, I need to do all this stuff. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, you just need to get out there, get on podcasts, keep it simple. And then, do a retrospective, look back, see how it worked, what worked, what didn't work, tweak it, but don't send the audience into 5 different directions online. It's a recipe for herding cats.
Oh, God. Oh, goodness. Now, so we have a perfect segue for you to give us your call to action. Show us how it's done. Where can they find you?
Yeah. So at this point, if you have enjoyed hearing me speak and you would like to get booked on podcasts, schedule a consultation call with me at interviewconnections.com/consult. interviewconnections.com/consult. You can book right on my calendar and we'll have a chat. See if we can help you.
And there you have it from a pro, guys. That was perfect. No, thank you so much for being here, Jessica. I really, really enjoyed this conversation with you. And I would love to bend your ear additionally. I hope that you guys enjoy this podcast and we shall see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.